Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Ayin Aleph in Masechet Chullin. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. So we are, yesterday, we concluded with proof supporting the two positions in our Mishnah. The Tanakama says if one touches a dead fetus inside a non-kosher animal, one remains tahor. And he learns that from a Gzera Shava between kosher animals and non-kosher animals. And just as a kosher animal, that's true. If one touches a dead fetus inside a kosher animal, one remains tahor. So too, if one touches a dead fetus in a non-kosher animal. Rabbi Yossi Glili, on the other hand, learns from a pasuk that only references non-kosher animals in connection with tuma to say, hey, that pasuk only references non-kosher animals with respect to tuma. So there must be a situation where non-kosher animals convey tuma in a way that kosher animals do not, and namely that way is that if you touch the dead fetus of a non-kosher animal that's inside a non-kosher animal, so then you'll be tameh because that non-kosher dead fetus is considered a nevela. Now, as part of that effort, we saw the position that the category of chaya includes behema, and the category of behema includes chaya. And so, as we begin today on the eighth line from the bottom of Ayin Amabet, the Gemara quotes a brisa that makes exactly this point. So we're going to have a story. It's an interesting brisa in the fact that it's structured as all Rabbi Yonatan speaking. So Amar Rabbi Yonatan, and he's telling us the report of his conversation with Ben Azai. So so Tanya, we have learned in a brisa. Amar Rabbi Yonatan. Rabbi Yonatan says, "Namti lo v'leven Azai." I said to Ben Azai, "Lamadnu nivlat behema Torah shemitama." We know that a kosher animal that is the carcass, so it's a dead kosher animal that it conveys tuma. The nivlat behema tameimat. And we also know that that same thing is true for a non-kosher animal. Nivlas chayat tameya. And we also know that a carcass for a chaya is a wild animal. Behema is a domesticated animal. Chaya is a wild animal in general. Is also going to be convey tuma. Nivlas chaya tahora lo. But we did not lo but we did not learn explicitly what the law would be in connection with the carcass of a clean chaya. So minayin, how do I know that in fact it too, its carcass also will convey tuma? So namely, so Ben Azai responded and said to me, Kol holech al kapab b'chol hachaya holechet. That any animal that walks on its paws, that's al kapab, so meaning that it does not have split hooves, b'chol hachaya, anything among the chaya, and again, b'chol hachaya. So as a result of the fact that it says anything among the bikol hachaya, so that's going to tell you that in fact it will also cover these a clean chaya. So namdilo. So I responded to Ben Azai that I don't think that that works because the bikol chaya is not the same as vikol chaya. Namdilo. I said back to him, v'chinemar vikol chaya and every chaya, because if it said and every chaya, that would tell you that there's some kind of addition that you should take from the word vikol. But v'halo lo nemar ela bikol hachaya. Within, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to tell you anything about additional chayot, but rather maybe it's going to tell you about within any chaya. It's really just telling us that the situation where within a creature, meaning if a creature is pregnant and the deceased is within it, that's where it's going to be convey tuma. Namely, that is basically the lesson that the lesson that that Rabbi Yossi Aglili had in our Mishnah and the position of Rabbi Yossi Aglili in argument with the Tanakama. So Namli, so Ben Azai said, Umay Yishmael Omer b'davar hazeh. All right. So you've shown that my support for this and my proof for this point that a kosher animal's carcass also conveys tuma is not a valid proof. So what did Yishmael tell me in this? Tell you in this situation? Meaning, what's his proof? So Namti Lo, I told him, V'chi yamut min ha-behema, that if a behema dies, so zo behema tameya, that refers to a unclean behema, meaning a non-kosher behema. Asher hi lachem lo achla. And then the pasuk continues, that is for you to eat, that is fit for eating. So zo behema Torah, that tells you about a kosher behema, kosher domesticated animal. So lamanu, so what do we see from this? So lamanu chaya bichlal behema ubehema bichlal chaya. But we have this principle that we mentioned at the end of the day yesterday, that the category of chaya includes behema, and the category of behema includes chaya, although the Gemara just said it in the other order. The category of behema includes chaya, and the category of chaya includes behema. So as a result, chaya tahora bichlal behema tahora. So a clean wild animal is in the category of the category called behema Torah, a kosher behema, and chaya tameya bichlal behema tameya, and a non-kosher chaya is in the category of non-kosher behema. And so as a result, that's how we can know, right? So therefore, behema tameya bichlal chaya tameya. And then not only do we say that, but in the other direction, a non-kosher behema is in the category of non-kosher chaya, and behema tahora bichlal chaya tahora, and the kosher behema is within the category of a kosher chaya. So as a result, all right, and so as a result, because every direction includes every possibility, my question that I began with is responded to, because I said, hey, we don't have a source for the fact that a clean chaya's carcass should convey tuma. The answer is that the same source that teaches us about a behema tahora, a behema that's kosher, is going to tell us also about a chaya that's kosher. Over lashon hazeh amarli. And so as a result, and now we're on the third line of Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. So the Ben Azai responded to me, Chaval al Ben Azai. What a shame for me, Ben Azai, Shalosh Shimesh as Rabbi Yishmael, that I did not have a chance to serve Rabbi Yishmael, because I would have learned this lesson. And now that I've learned this lesson, note that earlier he just referred to him as Yishmael because he had not learned from him anything. Now that he's learned from him something, he refers to him as Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, so that was the story that we had. But that doesn't give us the proof. Meaning, how do we know that a chaya is included in the category of behema? So chaya b'chal behema minalan. How do I know that the category of chaya is included in behema? So diksiv zos habehema asher tochelo shor se kisavim v'gomer ayil utzvi v'yachmud. Well, what do we say? These are the animals with the category of behema, which again ordinarily means domesticated, but in this pasuk will clearly not mean that, because what did it include at the end? After including the ox and the sheep, it then says the hart, the deer, and the yachmor. Well, those are wild animals. Those are not domesticated animals. And so as a result, that shows that the category, the title of behema also applies to chaya. Ha-ketzad, how can this be? It must be chaya b'klal behema. Chaya is included in the category of behema. Behema b'klal chaya minal. And how do I know in the other direction? Diksiv zos hachaya asher tochlu mikol ha-behema asher al haaretz kol mafreses parsa. What are the category of chaya, wild animals, and that you're allowed to eat? Well, you're allowed to eat every animal that has split hooves and chews its cud as it continues. So the point is that the category of chaya must include behema because the general category was zosa chaya asher tochlu. These are the chayas that you're going to eat, and within them we refer to behema. So again, ha ketzad behema b'chlal chaya. It must be that the category of behema is subsumed in the category of chaya, and so as a result, we have and now both chaya and behema effectively meaning the same thing or they can mean the same thing. They can be as broad as each other. So what do we learn from this is where the Gemara goes next. So
there are examples like the tzvi and the buffalo, for instance. They are chayot, but they would be tahor, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And so the point is so now what are we going to learn in every direction? So again, what are we going to learn about why a chaya tahora is included in the category of a behema tahora? What are we going to learn about a behema tahora that it's included in the category of chaya tahora? And what are we going to learn about a chaya tameya that's included in the category of behema tameya? And what are we going to learn about a behema tameya that's included in the category of chaya tameya? Those four directions, that's where the Gemara is going to go now. And so let's take a look and see what these four directions come and teach us. So chaya tahora b'chal behema tahora. What do we learn from that? L'simanim. That's coming to tell you that the same signs, namely split hooves and chewing cud, they apply not only to a kosher behema, but those are the same categories that you need for a kosher chaya. Chaya tameya b'chlal behema tameya, and a chaya that is not kosher is within the category of a behema that's not kosher. What does that tell you about? Leharba. That tells you that in fact you're not allowed to crossbreed two different species of chaya, or because the prohibition itself, the Torah, when it says its prohibition in Vayikra Perak Yutet Pasuk Yutet, only refers to behema. So as a result, it doesn't specifically say anything about chaya. So because behema now includes the term chaya as well, then not only is crossbreeding of a behema prohibited, but even crossbreeding of chayot are prohibited.
So how do we account for the mule, which is a crossbreed?
So you're at the fact that it is prohibited to engage in the crossbreeding does not, when it comes to animals or fruit for that matter, cause a prohibition of the produce of that crossbred relationship. And so while you are not allowed to crossbreed the two, if in fact the crossbreed happens, then you are allowed to use the animal or you're allowed to eat the fruit. That's why we're allowed to eat all the interesting fruit that exists today that are effectively crossbred fruit, right? So
tangerine. A tangerine.
Tangerine, exactly. All of those are crossbred, and we are allowed to eat them because the prohibition is only on the action, not on the outcome. Okay, so behema tameya b'chlal chaya tameya. So now we got to go in the other direction. So right, we've gone both of the kinds of chaya, kosher and non-kosher, are within behema. So we've already covered that. But behema tameya b'chlal chaya tameya. How do I know that or for what purpose do I learn that the behema that's not kosher is within the category of the chaya that's not kosher? Look at the Rebbe. That's the lesson that Rebbe taught us. The Tanya, because Rebbe uses this principle that if you tell me about a chaya, you will have told me about a behema in the following drasha. Now, this brisa we cited yesterday. We cited it in brief, but now we can cite it in full and understand what it is, and then understand how this shows that Rebbe must believe that an unclean behema is included in the category of a non-kosher chaya, that a non-kosher behema is included in the non-kosher chaya. Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says the following: Akra ani chaya. If the pasuk, this is the pasuk, Vayikra Perek Hey pasuk Bet. Again, this is the pasuk that Rabbi Yossi Galili used yesterday to tell us that in fact a non-kosher fetus that is dead within its mother conveys tuma, because this pasuk only refers to non-kosher animals. And so as a result, Rabbi Omer Ekra chaya. If the pasuk had only said, I'll read the pasuk only with chaya, meaning all we need is chaya in this pasuk. Now the pasuk also mentions I believe birds, but in any event, the bottom line is that it refers to chaya and it refers to an unclean behema. But it could have just referred to an unclean chaya. So behema lama nemra. Why does this pasuk reference a behema as well? So nemra kan behema tmeya. So over here in this pasuk, it talks about a non-kosher behema. V'nemar lahalan behema tmeya. And you know where else it mentions a behema tmeya? In Vayikra Perek Zayin pasuk Kaf Aleph. In that pasuk, it says, "V'nefesh kisiga b'kol tamei b'tumas adam over behema tmeya, o b'kol sheketz tamei, v'achal mibisar zevach hashlamim asher laHashem, v'nichrasa nefesh ahi mi'ameha." That somebody who is tamei and eats from the kodesh is going and does so intentionally, the pasuk is referring to, is going to suffer kares. They're going to be punished with kares. So the fact that that pasuk is talking about eating a korban is going to tell us what we're talking about in this pasuk, because Perek Hey pasuk Bet just says the following: Nefesh asher tziga b'chol davar tamei o v'nivlat chaya tameya o v'nivlat behema tameya, and then it concludes v'hu tamei v'ashem, and he does some kind of guilty thing, but it doesn't tell us what guilty thing he did. And those psukim are telling us that the person who does that guilty thing needs to bring a korban olav yori, the variable sin offering, where a poorer person, a very poor person brings a flour offering, a poorer person, a medium person who's somewhat poor brings a bird offering, and a more wealthy person brings an animal offering. And so we have this pasuk, but it's not clear what the prohibition is. And so Rebbe tells us, I'll tell you what the prohibition is. This pasuk did not need to mention behemat tmeya, and the words behemat tmeya are also in this pasuk in Vayikra Perek Zayin pasuk Kaf Aleph. And so as a result, I'll connect the two. And just like back into the Gemara, so Mala Halan, we're now in the middle of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16th line down on Ayin Aleph Amid Aleph. Mala Halan Tumas Kodesh, Avkan Tumas Kodesh. So just as over there in the pasuk in Perek Zayin, it's talking about either consuming food while one is consuming kodesh food while one is tamei, or entering the Beis Hamikdash, although it's not explicit. Entering the Beis Hamikdash while one is tamei as well is covered there. So avkan tumas kodesh. So too over here, it's going to refer to tumas kodesh, and this drasha only works, meaning you can only make this gzeira shava if the term behema tameya is unnecessary in Perek Hey. And so as a result, for Rebbe to say that this is true, he must believe that behema tameya is included in chaya tameya. And so as a result, because behema tameya is included in chaya tameya, so therefore the pasuk didn't need to mention behema tameya at all. And therefore, the behema tameya in Perek Hey can be used to create the Gzeira Shava to the Behema Tameya in Perek Zayin. So Behema Tahora, so we've now done 3 of the directions. What about Behema Tahora, Bechal Chaya Tahora? What do we learn from the fact that a kosher domesticated animal is within the category of a chaya tahora, a chaya that is kosher. Liyitzira, it's coming to tell us for the concept of yitzira, of forming it. Now, what is that referring to? Let's take a look. Ditnan, we learned in a Mishnah, hamapelet min behema chayav oaf. If, God forbid, a woman has a very disformed fetus, and as a result of the disformity, it aborts the fetus, and the fetus actually looks like some kind of behema, an domesticated animal, a chaya, a wild animal, or a bird. So ben tmeyin, ben torin, doesn't make a difference whether it's a kosher species of behema chaya or oaf, or an non-kosher species of behema chaya and oaf. Im zachar, if this animal, if this fetus is male, Teshev L'Zachar, well, then she is going to have to observe the Tuma periods of a male. She's Tameh for 7 days, Tahor for 33. Im Nekeva, if it's female, Teshev L'Nekeva, well, then she's going to sit for a total of 80 days, 14 clean and 66 tahor. So Eina Yodaya.
14 clean? You said 14 clean, and then tahora is 66.
Do I have it the other way around? Is it the other way around?
There's 7 and 33, and then it's 7 tamid, right?
It's 7 and 33 and 14 and 66.
Right.
And the first, yeah, I'm pretty sure I got it right. 14.
But you said clean, and you said clean, and then tameh.
Right. Yeah, isn't that the right order? No, I said tameya and then clean. You're right. You're absolutely right. I got it in the wrong order. Right. 100%. Yes. So the first 14 days are tameh if it's female, and the mother is tameh, and then she goes to the mikvah, and then she has 66 clean days where she's definitively clean. Now we actually don't follow this practice. We just follow whether or not a woman is actually still bleeding, and she can go to the mikvah when she's done bleeding. But in any event, Divrei Rebbe Meir, all of that is Rebbe Meir, and that is the position that matters for us, because Rebbe Meir is clearly saying that a yitzira, that it is considered a relevant form. The term yitzira is what is relevant in determining whether or not a woman is considered to have aborted something. If it's earlier than any yitzira, if she just is bleeding, then these laws associated with a birth do not apply. And so as a result, you need to have a yitzira. And so as a result, the term yitzira doesn't only apply to humans, according to Rebbe Meir, it also applies to animals, and to kosher and non-kosher animals. And that is how we learn, that is an aspect of learning a clean behemah from a clean chaya, that is the category of, that because the Torah itself says with respect to a chaya, it says in Bereshis, Perek Bet, Pasuk Zion, Vayitzer Hashem Elokim es ha'adam. Oh no, that's the pasuk for the creation of a man. But in Parak Bet pasuk Yutet, says Vayitzer Hashem Elokim min ha'adama kol chayat hasadeh v'ez kol ha'of hashamayim. So we see that the nature of Yitzer is used with respect to both chayot and ofot, and so as a result, that shows that in fact those two clearly could have a yitzira. Now, how do I know about a behema? Behema doesn't say yitzer, and so as a result, we must be learning behema from chaya, and that shows that a behema tameya and a tahora are both included in the category of chaya, and so as a result, that is the Rebbe Meir's position. The Chachamim disagree.
Well, where is that in the Gemara, the Yitzira? I'm looking for it.
No, it doesn't. It says, it just references the word Yitzira. That you have to go to Rashi. We'll do the Rashi so that you see it inside in the Rashi in a moment. So all of that was Divrei Rebbe Meir, finishing up this last little bit where the last word on the line three lines above the Mishnah. The Chachamim say, Kol she'eno mitzuras adam, eno vlad. That anything that does not have the form of a human being, that's not considered a child and will not trigger the Tuma and Tahara periods that a child would trigger. So let's take a look now in Rashi. So we're going to look at the Rashi. It's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. Behema tahora, beklal chaya tahora liyitzira. So we said that a kosher behema is included in the category of kosher chaya. Degabi chaya ksiva, because when it comes to a chaya, it says, and again, this is Perek Bet Pasuk Yud Tet in Bereshis, and so it says Yitzira, Ksiva Yitzira. It says Yitzira. Why does it say? It says Vayitzer. Vayitzer Hashem Elokim min ha'adama kol chayas hasadeh. And so as a result, v'nafka mina, and we derive from that, why does it matter? Limapelet. It applies to a woman who has abort something. Min behema chaya v'of. That if what she aborts looks like a behema, chaya, or oaf, de ka'amar Rebbe Meir, because Rebbe Meir says Torah's vlad aleihen, that even if it has the shape of a behema, chaya, or oaf, it is going to be considered a vlad for her, the iman, and the mother of this aborted thing, Yosheves aleihem yemei tuma v'yemei tahara. So she has to sit the number of days of tuma and tahara that we say with respect to somebody who has who aborts a fetus. V'amrinan v'hamapelet, and we say in hamapelet in Masechah Nida daf kaf bet amabet. My time of the Rebbe Meir. What is the reasoning of Rebbe Meir? Ho'ol v'nemar behen yitzira kadam. That since it says with respect to these animals, namely, we see that it says by a chaya and an oaf, it uses the term of yitzira. They are just like a human. V'hu adin de behema tameya b'chal chaya tameya. And as a result, given the fact that the pasuk only says chaya, and yet Rabbi Meir believes that behema is included in it, behema tameya must be included in the category of chaya tameya. Nami lahai milsa itzrucha. And so obviously it was necessary for this point. Ella kibar parishba milsa achrisi. One second, hold on.
Parish ba milta achrisi.
Ba milsa achrisi. Look at the Rebbe.
I don't know what that means.
No. And the point is that okay. The point is the following. That we need it. The point is that what Rashi is trying to say is the following. The truth is that this is referring, this learning of behema tameya that Rebbe Meir does is not literally only about a behema tameya. It is also about a behema tahora. And the point is that really there are other categories that when Rebbe does his learning also, it's talking about it may be talking about a behema tameya, but he would also agree that a behema tahora is also true. And so v'chada minayhu nakat b'kol klali debraisa parish chad minat milsa. That in each of these areas, now the point is that when it comes to this category, we may have already seen another lesson, but we also want to highlight that there are effectively 4 lessons for for the four directions. That's what Rashi is trying to convey here. And so even though this might have included another lesson that we could have learned, namely that in this particular case, it's both Behema Tahora and Behema Tameya that are included in the category of Chaya. Yes, that's true, but the Gemara is going through the four categories separately, and so that is why it's going to be in some ways under inclusive. Even though it's true that you could get both points from this particular Mishnah, we're only going to learn one of the points so that we have all 4 points that we have listed. So that is the bottom line point that we are trying
I
to
didn't get that
make.
from the words of Rashi. Milta, it's Ela Kevar Parishba Milta Achriti Kederemi.
No, the point is El Kvar Parish Ba Milsa. Achrisi, we've already categorized this. Look at the Rebbe, as Rebbe did. Meaning Rebbe's lesson that we learned a few moments ago, that Rebbe learned this Gzeira Shava and was able to learn this Gzeira Shava because the Behema Tameya was included in Chaya Tameya, that already covered it. V'chadaminai hu nakat. And we've already learned in one of these items, namely, we already learned from Rebbe the fact that a Behema Tameya is included in a Chaya Tameya. And so we didn't, the truth is that this lesson that we just learned, right, the position of Rebbe Meir is that all Chayos include all Behemot. And so as a result, we could have been more broad when we taught this. But the point is, ubekol kali de baraisa, all of the categories of this brisa, parish chada milsa. We're explaining one item for each of them. And so as a result, even though the general principle is that chaya includes behema and behema includes chaya, and so as a result, you could just view this as two principles. But the Gemara has gone through into and breaking it down into 4 principles. So it's both Behema Tameya is included in Chaya Tameya, Behema Tahora is included in Chaya Tahora, Chaya Tameya is included in Behema Tameya, and Chaya Tahora is included in Behema Tahora. So, but the point is that some of these, and particularly this last one, could cover both items. It covers both a clean Behema and both a kosher behema and a non-kosher behema are included in the category of chaya, because this Mishnah specifically references that both a kosher behema and a non-kosher behema, that if the woman aborts that form of creature, then it is going to cause her to be tameh for that number of days and tahor for that number of days. And so as a result, that shows that behema, whether it's kosher or not kosher, is included in chaya, because no reference to behema, whether kosher or not, has the language of Yitzirah. Only the chaya has the language of Yitzirah. But the point is that we are only learning this in the subcategory of Behema Tahora is Biklal Chaya Tahora. So that is what it means. My apologies for not reading it clearly before, but again, I'll read it now more clearly. So it's okay. So V'hu de behema tameya b'klal chaya tameya. The point is, right, so my time at the Rebbe Meir, we'll go back up to the parenthetical of where it says, nida kaf bet am a bet. So what's the reasoning of Rebbe Meir? Ha'ol v'nemar bahen yitzira ka'adam. It's because it says yitzira for a person, period. Now, again, this was in the category, the Gemara categorizes this as Behema Tahora B'chal Chaya Tahora. But v'hu adin the Behema Tameya B'chal Chaya Tameya. Now, you could learn from this particular point that a Behema Tameya is also included in a Chaya Tameya, because the Mishnah itself references that it doesn't make a difference whether the Behema is Tameya or Tahora. It still will have the rule that a woman who aborts it is going to be subject to the clean and unclean days, according to Rebbe Meir. And so it's clear that it doesn't make a difference whether it's a Behema Tameya or a Behema Tahora. It's included in the category of Chaya, because only Chaya has the word Yitzira in connection with it. In Pasuk Yotet, a parak bet of Bereshis. And so as a result, that's the situation that we could have learned both principles from Rebbe Meir. So Nami Lahai Milsa Itzricha, meaning we could also use this to teach that principle. Ella kvar parish ba milsa achrisi, but we already explained how a behema tameya is included in a chaya tameya because look at the Rebbe. We already learned it like Rebbe. And so as a result, we only are going to reference now the clean behema in the cat being in the category of clean chaya. Ubakol klale de brisa, and in each of the four categories that we mentioned in the brisa, parish chad milsa, we're explaining one item. So that is how to read that Rashi. And so my apologies for not getting it right immediately. Okay, so back into the Gemara. We're now one line above where it says in the Mishnah, beginning word on the line, Urabanan, Haikra Lamali. So in second, we've gone through this entire process. In fact, it took us yesterday. We saw that Rabbi Yossi Aglili relies on Vayikra Parakeh Pasuk Bet, the fact that it refers to only non-kosher animals being tameh. So according to the rabbis, and that's why, since it only mentions non-kosher animals being tameh, it must indicate that there's a situation where a non-kosher animal results in tuma where a kosher animal does not. And Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, what's that situation? It's where there's a dead fetus inside its mother. So that's the situation where a dead non-kosher animal conveys tuma, but a dead kosher animal does not. So what about what do the rabbis do? What does the Tanakama, who says no, a non-kosher animal inside its mother does not convey tuma if you were to touch it? Why does he need that verse? Meaning there's a lot of stuff in that verse. So Kulei, look at the Rebbe Yehuda Asa. He needs it all in order to teach the lesson that Rebbe taught, namely that because the Gzera Shava of Behema Tameya to Behema Tameya, that teaches that pasuk is talking about the rules of a person eating kodesh while tameh or entering the Beis Hamikdash while tameh, and that is the prohibition that one is violating accidentally in Parakeh pasuk bet of Vayikra. Okay, so that brings us to the next Mishnah, and having discussed the case of a person reaching inside an animal to touch a deceased fetus, the next Mishnah addresses the deceased fetus of a human being touched. So ha'isha shemes v'ladav b'soch me'eha, that if you have a woman whose fetus has died within her, so upashta chaya es yada v'nagabo, and the midwife now sticks her hand into the womb and touches the deceased fetus, hachaya tameya, the midwife who does so is going to be tameh, tuma shiva. It's as if she touched a corpse. Va'isha, but the woman herself, tahora achi avlad, is tahor until the fetus emerges. That's when she'll become tameh. So Amar Rabba says a principle. Now we are going to challenge eventually Rabba's principle from our Mishnah. But we are not going to get there today. That is going to be the beginning of tomorrow's daf. Amar Rabba, but let's see how we set this all up in order to understand Rabba's principle so that we can then use our Mishnah to challenge it. So Amar Rabba, kashem shetuma belua eina mitama, just as something that is tameh, that is swallowed up inside a person, does not convey tuma to another. Kach tahara belua, or we'll see an animal as well. Similarly, kach tahara belua eina mitama, meaning that when it comes to a tahor object, it cannot become tameh if it's swallowed up. So again, if you have let's say you eat a piece of tameh meat, and then you touch someone else, so that person's not going to be tameh as if they touched the piece of meat, because the meat is not touching anybody else; it's just inside you. And similarly, if you eat a kli, let's say you have a ring and you swallow the ring and it's not tameh, and now somebody tame touches you, and then you become tahor again after the process, and now the ring gets ejected from your body. And now that ring is not going to be considered tame because it was inside you when you became tame, and therefore the ring itself does not become tame. So tuma velua minalan. How do I know that something that is swallowed up that's tame does not convey tuma? That when somebody eats a nevela, they have to wash their clothing. Well, of course, they also have to go to the mikveh themselves, and they remain tameh until that evening. So the pasuk continues. So milo askina da'achol samach l'shkias hachama. We're talking about a situation, or the bottom line is the Torah doesn't tell us it's not about this situation. So the situation could be the following. I take this piece of, God forbid, I take this piece of tameh meat and I eat it, and now I become tameh, and all my clothing become tameh, and so I take all my clothing and I take myself and I go to the mikveh and we put it all in the mikveh, and now at sunset I become tahor. But I'm still digesting this piece of meat. And so this piece of meat that made me tameh, it's inside me. V'ka'amar rachmana tahor. And yet the Torah tells me that I am tahor, even though that piece of meat is still inside me. So again, Rashi tells us how this all works out. Milo askinan. Take a look at second of the wide lines in Rashi. We're talking about even a case where somebody were to eat some piece of nevela, a carcass of an animal that wasn't shechted, and so as a result it conveys tuma. It's still within his digestive tract. Velonis akla, it has not fully been consumed. Become tahor, and yet he can become tahor. The pasuk tells us that he becomes tahor with nightfall after going to the mikvah. Alma, so we see, Mekavan Shenivla'a, since it got swallowed, Harei he kimauchelet. It's as if it was consumed. Le'inyan l'tameh, in order to make l'timeh, in order to prevent with respect to the idea of making other things tameh. So it doesn't make anything else tameh. Now, by the way, don't say, Rashi's telling us now, don't tell me that the reason that this tuma within the person doesn't count and make the person tameh again, even though he's now gone to the mikvah, because it's, after all, it's touching him. Don't tell me that it's because it's only in touching his internal organs, and touching internal organs don't count as conveying tumah. B'toko shel adam beis hastarimhu, and that's considered the insides of a person. De'im kain tit'amu b'masa. Fine, you want to tell me that there's no touching when it comes to the internal organs, but there's still carrying. Carrying can be done in terms of internal organs. And if this piece of meat still conveyed tumah, it would be conveying tumah to the person because he's carrying it. Damrin b'yotze dofen, because we say in that chapter in Nida, nehi de tumas beis hastarim b'magalo mitame. Yeah, fine. You want to tell me that internal organs cannot be touched to convey tumah? That's fine. But b'masa miyamitame, but carrying still works. Elalav. So the bottom line is that if in fact this piece of tuma this piece of nevela were still considered tameh, then the person who went to the mikvah while digesting it would have stayed tameh. So shma mina, and the fact is the Torah tells us that he's not tameh. So shma mina b'liya ma'akavta milatameh. So as a result, the swallowing of it prevents it from causing tuma to others. So Rashi now, so back into the Gemara. So the Gemara now asks, okay, I understand your point, but Badilma Shiny Hasam Delo Chazya Lager. What's one of the principles of Nevela being something that could convey Tuma through swallowing it and convey Tuma at all is that it needs to be fit, there needs to be a fit to be given to a here ger doesn't mean a convert, it means somebody who happens to live there, a ger toshav, and because the idea is, the pasuk says, lo tochlu kol nevela, that you shall not eat any kind of carcass. Lager asher bisharecha tidnana, give it to the stranger or to the resident who lives in your gate. and he'll eat it. Or you can sell it to a non-Jew. You take your choice. But the bottom line is the pasuk implies that it needs to be fit to be eaten. So Hanicha Rabbi Yochanan the Amar. Now, this point about it needing to be eaten, it does not present a problem. Now, why does it present a problem? Let's start back up and just note why it presents a problem. Because after I've taken in that nevela piece, nobody else wants to eat that piece that I've swallowed. If I now barf it up, nobody's going to say, oh, I'll eat that. So as a result, it's disgusting. And therefore, it will no longer convey tuma because it's no longer fit for a human consumption. But Hanichla Rabbi Yochanan de Amar achatzo ad lekelev. According to Rabbi Yochanan, when it comes to whether this piece of nevela could convey tuma to a human or to other food, that's the achatzo, according to Rashi. Shapir, everything is okay. Because what does he say? He says that it need ad lekelev. He says that once it has the status, and this nevela, before I swallowed it, was fit for human consumption. But now that I've swallowed it, in order for it to no longer convey tuma to either a human or to food, it needs to be so disgusting that even a dog won't eat it. But if I barf it up, you know what? A dog would still eat it. And so as a result, that is not going to be, so the requirement that it be fit for a ger does not create a problem to Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan would say it was fit for a ger, and now to leave the category of being something that can be mitame even a human, it needs to be so disgusting that even a dog wouldn't eat it. And this isn't that disgusting. So Shapir, this proof still works. That when it comes to the more stringent tuma of making a person tameh, then it has to be lager. It has to be fit for a human to eat it. And here, it's no longer fit for a human to eat it. The tuma kala ad lekelev. And he says that no, only the lighter tuma that is necessary to contaminate foods, that's what you need to have. That is going to be sufficient until it's so disgusting that even a dog won't eat it. So mishum de lo chazil lagerhu. So as a result, this is not fit for a ger, and therefore it should no longer convey tuma for that reason. So you can't tell me that this is a proof that a swallowed item doesn't convey tuma, because I'll tell you another reason that it doesn't convey tuma, because it's so disgusting that no human would eat it. So how does Bar Panda understand the concept? Meaning, according to Rabbah, how does according to Rabbah that says that something that's swallowed, it doesn't convey tuma, what's his proof? Because this proof, that his initial proof, doesn't work according to Bar Panda. So, all right, you know what? Actually, it does work even according to Bar Panda. Because you may be right that if the ger sees me barf it up, he will never eat it. However, shelo b'fanav mechazia chazile. But if I barf this food up and don't tell anybody, and it looks whole, and we wash it off, and then it could be fit for him to eat it still. And so as a result, it's only disgusting. Things are only disgusting when you know why they're disgusting. They may not be disgusting if you don't know why they're disgusting. And so as a result, that's going to be the situation. And therefore, this is a valid proof that something that has been swallowed does not convey tumah. So ashkan tuma belua. We have now shown that if something is tameh and it's been swallowed, it will not convey tuma. Tahara belua minalan. How do I know that if something is swallowed that is tahor, it will remain tahor? So kal v'chomer, it's a kal v'chomer. If you have an earthenware vessel that is completely surrounded, and meaning it's a whole vessel, and you've got a fat top on top of it, if you have a piece of tuma inside it, that piece of tuma will make the vessel tameh, and the vessel and will continue passing up. If you have this, Rashi tells us that we're talking about. Let's take a look at Rashi. Umakli charis hamukav tzamid pasil she'enu matzil al tuma shebetoko milatame. Now we're on the third to last wide line on Ayin Aleph Amid Aleph. She'im haya kizayas hames Mitoko ein bli es hakli ma'akavto milatame es hakli es kol ha'ohel. It will, this tuma that's inside this earthenware vessel will go into the entire house. It's going to cover everything, and so, but when it comes to so she'enu matzel al tuma shebetokum l'tamei, it doesn't prevent the tuma from being transmitted. Da'amar mar tuma ritzutza bokas vola ad l'rakia. That if you have tuma that is underground and is completely buried, so that it's there's no airspace above it, it will continue to go up until the heavens. So matzel al tahara shebetokum l'tamei, and so and yet this earthenware vessel, if it has that same closure, and now it has within it something that is tahor, and the tuma is only from the outside, it's going to be prevent the object inside from becoming tamei. So Adam shematzil al tuma shebetochom l'tamei, but a person, he that swallows something prevents the tuma inside it from projecting outwards. So eino din shematzil al tahara shebetochom l'tamei. It should certainly prevent the tuma, something that's tahor inside him, from becoming tamei. So 1 second, that might not be a good proof. So because mala kli cheres came a mitame megabo, but 1 second, a kli cheres has a more lenient aspect to it, because it does not become tamei at all from the outside. Tomar ba adam shemitame megabo. Can you tell me that a person has greater protections? A person does become tamei from the outside. No, ato anan megabo kamrinan. Right. Ato. Can you say anything about you're talking about the exterior? Mitoko kamrinan. We're talking about the interior. So adaraba. Kli cheres chamor mitame ma'avira shekem mitamo me'avira. When it comes to a kli cheres, it's actually the one that's more strict, because if you put tame in the airspace, even without touching it, the entire thing becomes tamei. And so if we just focus on the inside of this vessel, it is more strict than a human, and therefore it is a valid kal v'chomer. Okay, so ashkechan balua dilamala. Okay, you've now proven when you swallow it with your mouth. Balua dilamata minalan. How do I know that if one were to inject something anally, that would also be considered covered up? Kal v'chomer, it's a kal v'chomer. Umalamala she'ein osa equal in the upper part of the digestive system, where there is basically no digestion. It doesn't actually consume the item. Matzil, it will prevent tuma from being transmitted either in or out. Lamata she'osa equal. When it comes to the bottom part of the digestion system, which is the part that actually causes the thing to no longer exist, to consume the item, eino din shematzil, it should certainly prevent tuma from going in any direction. Klum osa equal lamata elul al yadei lamala. But 1 second, the only reason that the digestive system works to destroy the item in the lower digestive system is because you consumed it in the upper digestive system. Afilu haki equal dilamata rab. No, but even so, you're right that usually when you go through the digestive system, the bottom part only gets it because the top part got it. But nonetheless, the bottom part has the greater digestion, the greater destruction of the item than the top part, and so therefore it's still a valid kal v'chomer. So ashkechan balua de adam. All right, you've now shown that if something is swallowed by a human, that it's not going to convey any tuma in or out. Balua de behema minalan. How about an animal? Kal v'chomer. We're going to have a kal v'chomer. Uma adam shemitami mechayim. A human being can become tummy while alive. Matzah b'valua. And yet, when it's something which swallows something, it prevents tuma from going in or out. Behema she'einu mitame mechayim. An animal cannot become tummy while it's alive. Eino din shetatzel b'valua. It should certainly be able to prevent things from tuma from transferring when it's inside it. So mala. Oh, and second though, maybe not. Mala adam shekain sarach shehiyah bevesa and menuga. There's an aspect of humanity that is more strict than when it comes to an animal, because a human being who goes into a house that is subject to tsaras, they need to wait within the house the amount of time to eat something in order for the tuma to go on the person's clothing. So Tomer bebehema. Wait, are you going to say the same thing is true for an animal? It does not require any time for the within the house for the things that it is wearing or carrying for it to be subject to tsaras. And so as a result, maybe you could say that humans are actually in this way more lenient than animals, and therefore the kal v'chomer is not a good kal v'chomer. So in second, though, no, it is a good kal v'chomer. Behema de'ena tzricha shehiyah bebayis hamanuga l'mai hilchasa. What are you talking about when it comes to an animal not requiring waiting within the tsaras house in order for the things that are on it to become tamei? L'kelim sha'al gaba, to the vessels, the clothing, whatever that are on top of it. Adam nami lobai. But when it comes to something that is literally on top of a person, that also doesn't require any time. Titanan, because we have a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in Negayim, Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Mishnah Tet, where it says, Hanichnas lebeis hamenuga. If you go into the house of a that has subject to tsaras, v'chelav al ksefab, and he's got vessels on his shoulders, and he's got his shoes and his rings in his hands, meaning he's carrying them, not wearing them. Who vehain tamei miyat, everything becomes tamei immediately. Hayalavush kelav, if he was wearing the garments, v'sandalav beraglav, and the shoes were on his feet, v'tabosav be'etzba'o, and his rings were on his finger. Hu tamei miyad vehain torin ad sheyisheh b'chdei achilas pras. But he would become tamei immediately. But the things he's wearing, they have to wait within the house an amount of time that it would allow him to eat a piece of bread, eat a half loaf of bread. And what kind of bread are we talking about? Paschitim, wheat bread, below pas orim, not barley bread. Presumably, barley bread is
with salt. The bread.
well, you could, with a little bit of salt in it on it, maybe.
No salt.
Yeah. But in any event, the bottom line is that wheat bread is a little easier to eat, so you're going to eat it more quickly. Mesa va'ocha b'lipatan, and and you're reclining and eating it with with some kind of dish that you're eating it with. You're eating it with some kind of relish, some kind of jelly, whatever. The point is that you're having something with it. You're not just eating it plain, so that you can eat it more quickly. And the bottom line is that that's the amount of time. And so we've resolved this. It is a good kal v'chomer because a person is generally more strict than an animal, and therefore, if it works for a person to be something swallowed doesn't convey tuma or have tuma conveyed to it, so then the same thing is true for an animal. Amarava tarvayu tananahi. One second, though, we already have both of these principles as a Mishnah. Why are you bothering to tell me this? I'm sorry for not scrolling. Why are you bothering to tell me this? We have both of these teachings. We've already learned in Mishnayos that we know that something that is swallowed does not convey tuma or have tuma conveyed to it, because tuma belua tanina, tahara belua tanina. We've learned about both of them, whether it's swallowed tuma or swallowed tahar, that we know it will not convey tuma and it will not have tuma conveyed to it. Tuma belua, when it comes to swallowed up tuma, we know Ditanan, because we have a Mishnah. There's a Mishnah in Mikvos, Mishnah Perek Yud, Mishnah Chet, where it says, Bala tabat meya, if a Kohen swallows a tamei ring, tovel ve'ochel b'trumaso, he is allowed to do tvila and then eat his truma, even though the ring is still inside him. Hekia, if now he then disgorges it either direction, tameya, he now becomes tamei. It remains tamei. This ring is still tamei. V'tima too, and it causes him to become tamei anew. So tahara belua tanina, and now that shows that it's when it's inside him, it does not convey tuma. And again, it also shows very clearly that it not only does it not convey tuma, but it still remains tamei, even though he's now gone to the mikvah. And you might have thought, oh well, he went to the mikvah, so it will also make the things inside him tahor. No, it stays tamei. It just doesn't have the ability to convey tuma to anything because it's inside him. And similarly, tahara belua tanina, we also learned about a tahor item. Ditanan, because we have a Mishnah, the Bala, in that same Mishnah, that we just cited. So again, Perik Yud Mishnah Chet. Bala tabas tahora, if he swallows a tahor ring, v'nichnas la'oel hames, and he goes into a tent that has a corpse in it, v'hiza v'shana v'taval, and now he was sprinkled, and he got sprinkled again, meaning on days 3 and 7 he got sprinkled, v'taval, and then he went in the mikvah, so he went through the entire tumas mace process of becoming tahor, vehikia, and now he disgorges it. It is tahor as it was originally, meaning the ring that was swallowed was never tameh at all, even though even though he went inside a house that was tameh. So the bottom line is Rabba's two statements are not news; they are things that we learned from a Mishnah. So what is he really saying to us? What's the big chiddush? So Kikama Rabba, here is the big news. When did Rabba make this statement? Kigon Shibala Shtei Tabaot. When you swallow 2 rings, Achat Tameh Achat Tahora. 1 ring is Tameh, 1 ring is Tahor. So I might have thought that because these rings are now touching one another, Delo Mitamyala Tahora. The 2 rings do not contaminate one another, and they are considered not one. The one that's tameh will remain tameh as it passes through him, and one that remains tar as it passes through him. Even if they were to touch inside him, they would not become tameh. Now, this is what is going to trigger our discussion, because what do we say about these 2 rings? These 2 rings don't make one tameh to the other because they are both inside the person. What about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah said that the chaya, that the midwife who touches the infant and the deceased fetus inside the mother becomes tameh. But we just said that Tuma and Tara don't pass with inside a person, and our Mishnah says that it does. So how do you resolve this possible contradiction? So for that discussion, for that question, and the Gemara's answer, you're going to need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.